Hello and welcome to the NBA DFS Slate Breakdown for Friday, February 23rd. We are back. We're breaking it down. We got a 10-game slate on FanDuel, and it's only 6 games on Draftkings. Draftkings cut out the last 4 games. We will try our best to hit on everything, and now let's get into it. But before we do, come join us at LionStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to everything we do, all the props, all the tools, everything you will see today, as well as our Props AI tool. Now, let's get into the fun. FanDuel, starting at point guard as usual. Highest owned guy, Emmanuel Quickly, 22% owned. We have a decent matchup rating for him for alert score. He's getting a ton of ownership. I personally just don't really love it. He did just have a very good game versus Brooklyn. Played 33 minutes, got 45 fantasy points, but that is also his season high starting. He's only had two games in the 40 all season long, several 38s, several 39s, but only a couple over the 40, and to really make this work, he's got to hit the 40s, and at high ownership, I don't really love it. 0.97 fantasy point per minute guy in a good matchup, so I absolutely understand why you want to go there. I just don't love the spot in the high ownership. Getting to a little bit, not a ton. Jeremy Shokan. So he has dual positional ability, and for that reason, I am getting a little bit more of him. Price point's kind of nice too. You know, he has a bunch of 30s, has some big ceiling games in those mid 40s, even into the 50s, and it is a decent spot versus the Lakers here, who have a 240 over under. Lakers are in a back-to-back. LeBron didn't play yesterday. He should play today, but it is an interesting spot and one that he absolutely can do well in. So I understand why people are going there. Jordan Goodwin, he is expected to play. He played 29 minutes last game before the All-Star break, 24. The game before that, Scottie Pippen is out. He is likely going to be starting and likely going to play a decent amount of minutes here at 4.1K. Understand why people are going there, absolutely. It is a tough matchup, though. Clippers are very good versus the point guard. I like the spot. Don't absolutely love the spot. But we got to wait and see. You know, this Memphis lineup could be anything. They have some guys coming back. They aren't as beat up as they used to be. But it is an interesting spot. Very well could be starting. If he starts, plays 30 minutes, it's going to be pretty hard to get away from him at 4.1K when he's the point guard and going to have the ball in his hands a lot. All right, so next we got some pivots. There's a lot of pivots I like today. One being Trae Young. He's not that low owned, but 9.3K. We know the ceiling that he has, and Raptors aren't great versus point guards, so definitely interested in some Trae Young. Then the man, Jordan Poole, who is absolutely overpaid and not very good, and, you know, kind of phoning it in now that he is has that big time contract. He went to the bench. I do expect him to be back in the bench today. But with that, I think his usage is a little bit higher, and that is why I'm getting to him a little bit. I think that coming off the bench, he's going to have more of a green light to just pull the trigger and be a little more of the guy that we saw him as a warrior. I mean, he took 17 shot attempts last game, only had 4 made field goals, so he didn't play that well. He didn't shoot the ball very well, but my thing here is that I wouldn't be that surprised if he has an absolute green light, and the bench versus Thunder is much weaker than their starting lineup. So the spot's kind of interesting to me. He played 30 minutes. He could very easily still play 30 minutes in this spot once again. So I'm a little bit intrigued. Nobody's going there. So it's interesting. Trey Mann, we went over him a little bit yesterday. 6.6K yesterday. He's down to 6.3. It's still a decent spot. Warriors are just average versus point guards. Look, it's a guy that's been right around a 1.1 fantasy per minute guy as a starter. If you look back into seasons prior, he's had, solid games as a starter. Now, do I think he's a 1.1 guy? No. But I do think this offense uses the point guard a lot, and that definitely helps his fantasy production. Now, he's going low owned. So in that situation, I'm a little more willing to give him that 1.1, but kind of looks interesting if, in your 1.05, 1.1 area in this spot, decent total. Don't hate going to Mann when, he showed us 45-point upside at 6.3K. So I'm intrigued. And next, Anthony Simons. All right. Simons, 1.2 fantasy per minute without Brogdon, Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe. All three of those guys are out once again today. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. He's going to have a green light. He's 7.7K. He has a 60-point ceiling. He's in 40s regularly. He is a very good GPP play because he is a guy that is either mid-20s or mid-40s. There's not much in between. He's either going to make your lineup at low ownership or crush your lineup at low ownership. So he is a play that I like to use because, I build lineups to win. I don't care about min cashing. I just want a couple lineups to have a shot at the end of the night. And I think Simons is an interesting one. They're huge underdogs, but the thing that's interesting is they somehow have stayed into every game versus Denver in Denver, where Denver is much tougher to play. They're now in Portland, and I think there's a chance they can stay in this game at least into the fourth quarter. And if that's the thing, Simons has a legit chance to get there. Next, Fred VanVleet, point guards versus Suns. So he came back from injury last game, only played 30 minutes last night. Now, the thing I want to bring into that is he didn't play the fourth quarter. So he was on pace to play his normal allotment of Fred VanVleet minutes. This guy plays a ton of minutes. I am intrigued to go back there when nobody is in a very good matchup. Now, he hasn't been great lately, but this price has come down to 7.9. I'm intrigued to buy a little low on a little FVV. Now, point guard on DraftKings, high owned, DeJounte Murray, Devin Booker, Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones' usage will be a little bit better without Jordan Poole in the starting lineup. Still, same issue, though, is that he doesn't get a ton of minutes, and it's a very tough matchup versus the Thunder. So I don't love the spot for him, but understand you going there. 6.7K for FVV is too little. Booker, look, Bradley Beal and Nurkic is doubtful. Booker usage goes way up, and he's going to play a ton of minutes. Murray's price at 7.5 is probably a little bit too low. I do like the matchup for Trae Young better than Murray, though. That is my one issue there. And getting over to the matchups, let's go over to the team defense as we can show off the new tool a little bit more. I like to do 20 games. If I have some consideration of what's going on here, I will toggle through to see it, but that's my favorite here. So, very top, Fred VanVleet, 0.14 fantasy per minute extra point guard versus the Suns. It's one of the things we've seen. Trae Young's there. Trae Young looks good. Steph Curry, guy has been incredibly hot. Can't hate on him now as well. Emmanuel Quickley, Trey Jones, all showing up. Do want to point out that it is the Spurs Jones, not Washington in that situation, whereas Tyus Jones for Washington is the one getting the more ownership, but in a poor matchup. All right, shooting guard. So high-owned Eric Gordon, Brandon Podziemski, and Emmanuel Quickley. No Bradley Beal. Gordon's going to play a bunch of minutes. He played 35 last night. I would expect the same tonight. And at 49K, he's a guy that can get you 30 plus points. So got to be intrigued there. Podziemski's salary is up a little bit. He is at 6K. We have a solid ceiling that he has shown of mid 40s, low 50s. So I get why his price is so high, but I just think that 90% of the time at this salary, he's not going to pay you off. He can absolutely pay you off a few times with a game-winning score, though. So I like him. I think his ownership should be lower, but that's just my worry with him. Devin Vassell, I think, is in an absolutely great spot versus the Lakers. He's been playing a lot of minutes and really coming through. He's been living right around that 40 mark, and he has that ceiling of, high 40s into the 50s. So absolutely intrigued by going to some Vassell. D Book, we talked about a little bit already, in a great spot. No Bradley Beal, or Bradley Beal's doubtful. Nurkic, doubtful. Just makes that ceiling for Booker way higher. Jordan Poole, Simons, we talked about them, and we're moving over to shooting guard on DK. DeJounte Murray, Eric Gordon, Devin Booker, Gary Trent Jr. Trent Jr. still starting, playing a lot of minutes, only 4,300. In a good spot. Don't mind taking some chances with him. He's not too high owned. He's a nice cheap flyer for sure. Getting over onto the matchups. Austin Reeves, Devin Vassell, Duncan Robinson, Gary Trent, all popping up a little bit with a little Eric Gordon showing as well. Small forward, Eric Gordon, Royce O'Neal, Brandon Podziemski. Royce O'Neal we got to talk about. So he's been playing a lot of minutes off the bench when anybody gets hurt. 30 minutes last night, 24 the game before that, 30 the game before that. I think he's set for another 26, 28 minutes, 4.5K. It's pretty interesting. He's been producing at a much better rate on the Suns than he did for the Nets. Now, I don't know if you should really give him that extra bit, but it is, something that is interesting, and, you can put a feather in his cap for it, I guess, and just take notice of that. Other thing, both teams on back-to-back, so wouldn't really worry about the back-to-back whatsoever. And let's go over to DraftKings. Small forward, Royce O'Neal, Herb Jones, Scotty Barnes. Gotta bring up Herb Jones. Went absolutely nuts last game. As I talked about yesterday, he's been playing more minutes again. So he's in that consideration today. Now he's high owned. Zion and Brandon Ingram are both questionable. Zion played last night. It's a back-to-back. With how injury prone he is, I wouldn't be surprised if he sits. Ingram, on the other hand, didn't play last night. So we could very well see it where Zion's out, Ingram's in, or both of them are out. But as long as one of them is out, it's a big bump up for good old Herb Jones. Scotty Barnes, 8.8K is way too low for DraftKings. Versus Atlanta, 60-point ceiling in a pace-up spot versus a poor team, versus power forwards. Extremely intriguing. And matchup tool, Sadiq Bey, Max Strus, Andrew Wiggins, RJ Barrett, all popping up a little bit. Strus is a little bit interesting. I'm getting a little bit of him. My only issue with him, he's right around 5K. My issue is I just don't think he's going to get into the 40s. That is about his ceiling, low 40s. I think his median projection should look good. And if he's hitting the shots, it can go in. The 76ers are poor versus the 3-point on small forwards. So I'm intrigued. We'll have a little bit, just not going to go overboard on him. Wiggins is another one that's intriguing to me. RJ Barrett is. Don't mind any of them. Power forward, Royce O'Neal, KD, Drew Eubanks. O'Neal, we talked about. KD, look, either KD or Booker is going to go off. I don't mind either of them. Drew Eubanks. Eubanks is probably going to be starting with Nurkic out. But knowing his minutes is going to be very, very hard to decide. So he went 29 minutes the last time he started. 2 times before that, 15, 17 minutes. And those are the 3 starts he's had this year. So 20 minutes has been his average. But it's a big range of outcomes here. He's high owned. I have a hard time thinking that he's going to play 28 minutes and go with that. Now, if he plays 28 minutes, he's going to look nice. If he plays 20 minutes, the ceiling's just not there. So that is my issue, and that's the kind of question you need to ask yourself before you put him in a lineup or when you're considering him in your player pool. All right, some pivots. Evan Mobley. Mobley's back. Played 34 minutes last night. He can absolutely do that again. They could be a little worried with him just on the back-to-back, but guy's been back for a couple weeks now. Also had the All-Star break. I bet he is just full on. We have him at 32.5 minutes. He's a guy that can produce very well from fantasy per minute standpoint, 1.18, and now he has a good matchup versus 76ers. So definitely intrigued. Then AD versus the Spurs. Spurs, huge total, makes total sense. He has a string of 60s and 70-point games over the last month, so absolutely intrigued by going to good old AD, especially at lower ownership. And got to talk about Marvin Bagley here. All right, he's had 6 starts as a Washington Wizard. 48, 39, 9 points, 36, 34, 25. So 4 of those we would absolutely be able to handle as far as a DFS lineup at this current price, and the matchup is decent. So I don't mind going back to Bagley. I think Bagley's in an interesting spot, going low owned, and a guy that could get you into, the 40-point range at 6.1K. Breaking little news here. We just talked about AD, so it is relevant too. Anthony Davis is now questionable, and LeBron James is probable. Davis doesn't play. It opens up a bunch of value on the Lakers. However, all the value being Hayes, Woods, is interesting because they're all probably only going to play like 22, 24 minutes. They're not going to get a full run, but they are absolutely interesting. And Hachimura would get a little bump up as well, maybe a couple more minutes. LeBron's usage goes up. It would be intriguing for that Lakers team. And power forward on DK, Royce O'Neal, KD, Herb Jones. Talked about them all. Get over to the matchup tool. And Hachimura, Evan Mobley, Jalen Williams, Jalen Johnson. Look, Hachimura is already popping. If AD is out, makes it a little more interesting for him. Jalen Williams is in a really good spot. Mobley we went over. Jalen Johnson I am very intrigued by. So they have Clint Capella, who is going to be on a minute limit. He might only play 22, 24 minutes. They have Fernando, who, Fernando's not a great center. He's not that big either. And then they have, I think, Jalen Johnson, who, plays power forward a lot, but I think there's potential for him to hit the boards a little harder in this game with their injured center spot with Okongwu out and Capella just coming back first game from injury. So slightly intrigued to go there. And on to center. High owned, Eubanks, Evan Mobley, AD. We went over all of them already. I got to give you a few pivots. Zubac. Zubac played 29 minutes last game, 28 the game before that. I expect him to be in that 28 to 30 range again, but it's just an elite matchup versus the Grizzlies. And we have seen Zubac go absolutely nuts, absolutely nuclear versus teams. He definitely can get into the, high 40s or 50 at 6K. So intrigued to go there. Also, Holmgren has a huge ceiling. 60-point ceiling at 8K is intriguing, in a very good spot versus the Wizards, who can give up a lot of steals and blocks and points, rebounds, can kind of give it all up, and Holmgren can score fantasy points in a lot of different ways. So definitely a little bit intrigued there. On to center on DK, Eubanks, Mobley, Kuzma coming up. Kuzma is interesting to me. He put up 60 last night. Could easily play, 34 minutes tonight if they stay in the game. Now that is going to be hard. They were in Denver last night. Now they're in Oklahoma City tonight. So traveling on the road in back-to-backs, not the easiest thing in the world to do. But Kuzma can absolutely do well. And at 7.4K, a guy with that kind of ceiling, you gotta look at it. One thing, they're 16-point underdogs. So he would have to have a huge game to keep them in it. Or Bagley could have the big game to keep them in it. So intrigued to go over and use Washington. Don't absolutely love it because they could just get blown out and get crushed. Sengun is a little interesting, especially with Nurkic out. The Suns have been very good versus center, but that's a lot because of Nurkic, and now there's no Nurkic, so Sengun is interesting. And onto the matchup tool. Zubac, Holmgren, Davis, Jokic. Looks like it could be a little bit more of a pay-up day at center. A lot of good pay-up options that look nice if you don't want that. There's Eubanks, who he is in a decent spot. We just got to watch that ownership as the day goes on because really have no idea what his minutes are going to be right now. I am at 22 in my own model, and, we'll see. All right, guys, that will do it for us today. You all have a good one. We will be back next week. Good luck. Let's make some money, and please like, comment, and subscribe to the video. See you guys later. Good luck.